remember the first meet I swam in. I was in Rome, an international meet, and this coach came up to me after my first race and said, "Oh, Dara, it's just so great to see you swim." And I thought he was going to continue to compliment me, and I was kind of liking it. And instead he says, "You know, my swimmer was in your race." I'm like, "Oh, that's great." And he said, "You know," she came up to me after the race, and she said, "You know what, Coach? That Dara, she's older than my mom." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I think that was true for a number of swimmers in the Olympic trials and all the races I swam in. But it was great being back. It was fun to be competing at the top level. You know, the Olympic Games it happens every 4 years, and it happens every 4 years for a reason. And you have the best athletes in the world come to this one games, one athletic event, and you compete at the highest level, and it's such a rewarding feeling. And you know, you just, as a 41-year-old, you see things differently through your eyes than you do, say, for example, my first Olympics when I was 17 years old. You appreciate things more. You're more aware of things, more cognizant of things. You approach things differently. And I know one of the things, I was in the ready room, which is the area that they showed it on the screen when I was drinking something or whatever, and it's where all the athletes hang out and before you swim. And if you're not there 15 minutes before you swim, you get disqualified. And it's just funny because you can see the difference between me and, say, a Kate Campbell, who's 16 years old, who I swam against in the finals and got third in the 50. There's just a maturity level difference. And it's not to say that I don't get as nervous as I did as my first Olympics when I was 17 years old. I mean, I think before each swim I felt like I was going to throw up. But I channel it differently. And having that experience, getting up on the blocks, knowing what I know from swimming in previous Olympics, was a huge advantage to me. So people can talk about my age, but it really was an advantage for me. I learned about sacrifice, hard work, dedication. I also learned that the water doesn't know your age, and I just know that you shouldn't put an age limit on your dreams. And one more thing I wanted to read. Marian Wright Edelman is a great American woman and the founder of the Children's Defense Fund, and she wrote, "I'm really grateful to have something that I'm passionate about and that is important to me." She says, "You're not obligated to win, you're only obligated to keep trying and do the best you can." And I think that's great advice because we don't win every day. And some days you simply have to celebrate the silver, and trust me, I know that. Boy, do I know that by 100th of a second. And I actually brought one of my medals, and there's one last thing I wanted to say. This was from these Olympic Games, and there's one last thing I wanted to say, and that is, I'm sure you guys have all heard that Lance Armstrong is making a comeback, and I was honored that he had mentioned my name about that if a 41-year-old like Dara Torres can do it, you know, he can do it. And I was very honored by that, and I started to think about the Olympic Games, and sort of, I didn't have a lot of time at that point to reflect on it, and in the last few days I've been reflecting on it, and I realized that getting these medals are great. It's you know, a nice icing on the cake, but there's a lot more rewarding things that come out of an Olympic Games. And for me, it's the fact that that I felt inspired by people who came up to me and told me their stories, and they felt inspired about my story, and that is what's rewarding. And for me, that's what comes out of Olympic Games that I appreciate the most. I mean, like I said, these medals are great, but it's the experiences you learn while you're there.